who had grandchildren. And every summer, the grandchildren would come over for 2 weeks, you know, that 2-week vacation before going back to school. Now, if anybody has a grandfather like my grandfather, my grandpa would have in the living room his chair that only he could sit in. This was the chair. He had his newspaper here, maybe his Bible here, his beer, whatever it was, and he's got his remote, and he's watching the baseball game, the football game, the news, and nobody could sit in this chair but him, even if he wasn't there. You cannot, this was like the Holy Grail. Nobody could touch that seat. And so when Grandpa was in his seat, nobody could watch anything but what he was watching. But one day in this story, Grandpa falls asleep. And so the grandchildren decided they want to play a practical joke. So they run into the kitchen, open up the refrigerator, and they grab a piece of Limburger cheese. Has anybody ever heard of Limburger cheese before? Limburger cheese is probably one of the funkiest, most rancid, disgustingest pieces of cheeses that you could ever smell. It's like a combination between butt, toe, head, all wrapped up. It's horrible. So they took this piece of Limburger cheese, snuck up on Grandpa, and stuck it in his mustache. It was about 35, 45 minutes later, all of a sudden, Grandpa wakes up and he's sniffing around and he's just like, what is that smell? It stinks in here. The living room stinks. So he gets up from his seat and runs into the kitchen, hoping to escape the smell, and takes another big inhale and says, the kitchen stinks. Leaves the kitchen, runs to the living room, into the den, hoping to get away from this horrible smell, takes another big inhale and says, the den stinks. There must be something in this house. And then he said, you know what, let me run to the front door. He runs to the front door, opens up the door, steps outside to take a big inhale of fresh breath, and says, the world stinks. But the reality is, it wasn't the living room that was stinking. It wasn't the kitchen that was stinking. It wasn't the den. It wasn't even the world that was stinking. What was stinking is what was attached to him. And oftentimes we have things that are attached to us that are stinking and funky and rancid. And what happens is, when you've been funky long enough, your nose begins to adjust to the smell. To the point where you can't even smell yourself anymore. But everyone around you can smell your sin. Everyone around you can see your issues. Everyone around you knows your craziness. Why does he treat people the way that he does? Why does she talk to people the way that she does? Everybody can see your mess, but you become oblivious to who you are because you did not take the time to be alone and by yourself and to self-reflect before entering into this new relationship. And so if you want to have a successful relationship, you must understand that there are 3 relationships that we must master. We got here. You want to know what they are? This is the part. So number 1, we have the relationship that we have with God. That is our vertical relationship. Number 2 is the relationship that we have with ourselves. That is what we call our internal relationship. And number 3 is the relationship that we have with others, that boyfriend, that girlfriend, that husband, that wife. That is what we call our horizontal relationships. The problem is, we've been so focused on horizontal relationships that we haven't taken the time to master the internal or the vertical, so that when we enter into problems, we have no foundation to stand on. Listen, you can't love somebody unless you truly love yourself. You can't love yourself unless you truly know yourself. Is that right? And so many of us are walking around, entering into one relationship after relationship, not knowing who we are, not knowing what we want, and we're doing this by trial and error, trying to figure it out in the process, and we're destroying other people's lives on our quest to figure out what it is that we truly need in our lives. But if we took the time to be alone, if we took the time to embrace this season of singleness. Now, while you are alone, understand that is the time to be self-centered. To be centered on yourself. To commit to becoming the best person that you can be. When you commit to the power of Kanai, which is constant and never-ending improvement, you become all that you need to be. See, we're so focused on meeting the right one instead of becoming the right one. And see, as I say all the time, there's nothing wrong with having a list. How many people in this room have a list of what they want? It's okay. It's all right. You've been told that lists are wrong. There's nothing wrong with having a list, but the key is become your list first. Because when you become your list, you can then qualify for what it is that you have on your list. Because if you broke, busted, and disgusted, don't have a pot to pee in or windows thrown out, according to the law of attraction, you're going to attract to you somebody who's broke, busted, and disgusted, don't have a pot to pee in or windows thrown out. So you have champagne taste, but you on a beer budget, and you think you qualify for champagne. No. You broke as a joke, no much bad credit. You have issues galore, and you want some guy to just sweep you off your feet, or some woman to sweep you off your feet and to solve all your problems. It doesn't happen like that. Because if you hear nothing else that I say in this workshop today, each and every one of you are magnets. You're a magnet. And you attract and draw to you things that are just like you. So why do I keep meeting the same dude? Why do every time I get into a relationship it's abusive? And I'm verbally beat up. And I'm physically beat up. Why? Because maybe there's something in you that you are unconscious of that is attracting that type of person. And until you self-reflect and get a checkup from the neck up, you won't know.